Everyone heard the sound, that raw, aggressive Ferrari engine screaming into life for the first time. To fans, it sounded like hope. To rivals, it sounded like a warning. But here's the problem Ferrari doesn't want anyone focusing on yet. While one part of the 2026 project is roaring with confidence, the rest of the car may already be playing catch-up. And in a regulation reset this big, that imbalance can be fatal. Before we break this down, make sure you're subscribed, because the 2026 era is exposing teams faster than ever, and Ferrari's situation right now might decide whether they finally return to the top or repeat the same painful cycle all over again. Behind that beautiful noise coming out of Maranello, a very different story has started leaking out of Italy, one that's far more complicated and far more dangerous than Ferrari fans expected. The 2026 regulations were supposed to be Ferrari's clean reset, a full reboot. New engine rules, new aerodynamics, a new culture under Fred Vasseur, and finally, the perfect moment to end a title drought stretching back to 2008. Instead, Ferrari now finds itself walking a tightrope between technical success and operational pressure. Let's start with the positives, because they matter. Ferrari's 2026 power unit has officially fired up, and in modern Formula One, that milestone is huge. This isn't a simple evolution. The 2026 engine is a completely different machine. 50% of its power now comes from the electric side. The MG UK alone is expected to deliver close to 500 horsepower, and nearly 3 times what today's cars produce electrically. The MG UH is gone. No more masking turbo lag, no more harvesting exhaust heat. That means louder engines, harsher combustion, and far less room for error. So when Ferrari's engine ran cleanly on the dyno early without catastrophic failures, it sent a clear signal across the paddock. The core architecture works, the hybrid systems are communicating, the sustainable fuel is behaving. In Formula One terms, Ferrari survived the most terrifying phase of engine development, the will it even live stage. And that's exactly where the contradiction begins. This contradiction is especially dangerous because 2026 engines are not flexible development platforms. Once the power unit is homologated, changes are extremely limited. Ferrari can't simply fix it later if the engine architecture doesn't integrate perfectly with the chassis, cooling layout, and battery placement. Every delay upstream magnifies downstream risk. A late chassis means compromises in packaging, which directly affects cooling efficiency, weight distribution, and aerodynamic freedom. And in 2026, cooling is performance. The new hybrid-heavy regulations generate unprecedented heat. Batteries, inverters, and power electronics all operate within narrow thermal windows. If Ferrari's chassis packaging is even slightly inefficient, the team may be forced to run conservative energy modes just to keep temperatures under control. That doesn't just hurt lap time, it limits strategy, overtaking ability, and race flexibility. In a field where margins are razor-thin, thermal inefficiency can quietly erase an entire season.
What worries engineers most isn't outright failure, it's chronic limitation. A car that technically works but can't be pushed. A car that survives races but never attacks. Ferrari has lived in that world before, and it's exactly what the 2026 reset was meant to escape. Because while the engine is alive, the car around it appears to be running late. Italian reports suggest Ferrari only recently approved the SF26 chassis, something that normally happens much earlier. That delay creates a domino effect. Late approval means late assembly. Late assembly means fewer system checks, and fewer checks mean far more risk once the car finally touches the track. The timeline is brutally tight. Ferrari plans to unveil the SF26 on January 23rd. The car is expected to be fully assembled just 1 day earlier. Then it's immediately shipped to Barcelona for the private pre-season test, starting January 26th. That leaves almost no buffer. No long shakedowns, no relaxed troubleshooting, no margin for error. In an era where these cars are more complex than anything Formula One has ever built, that's dangerous. Ferrari insists this is intentional. Fred Vasseur has confirmed the team will run a conservative Spec A version early on, prioritizing reliability and mileage before introducing aggressive upgrades. On paper, that sounds logical, but Ferrari has already tried the long-game approach and paid the price. They abandoned 2025 development early to focus on 2026. Instead of gaining momentum, 2025 collapsed. Fourth in the Constructors, 0 race wins. Lewis Hamilton's first Ferrari season ended without a single podium. Vasseur himself later admitted he underestimated the consequences of that decision. So when Ferrari says, "Trust the plan," the paddock isn't blindly believing anymore, especially when you look at the competition. Red Bull has already completed clean shakedowns. Audi has logged laps despite being brand new to Formula One. Aston Martin, even with Adrian Newey slowing decisions, appears structurally ahead. Ferrari, meanwhile, is racing the calendar. Calendar pressure is more than stress. It changes decision-making. When time disappears, teams stop optimizing and start accepting compromises. That's when temporary solutions become permanent weaknesses. Rivals with clean test programs aren't just collecting mileage, they're validating simulation correlation, refining energy deployment maps, and stress testing race scenarios. Ferrari, if delayed, risks entering the season with assumptions instead of data, and in modern Formula One, assumptions are lethal, especially in an era where software, not horsepower, decides competitiveness. Energy deployment curves, harvesting efficiency, and predictive algorithms are developed through repetition. Lose that repetition and you lose confidence. Lose confidence and drivers stop trusting the car. Once that happens, no amount of upgrades can restore momentum quickly. And then there's the human factor. Lewis Hamilton enters 2026 knowing this could be his final realistic shot at an 8th world title. That's why Ferrari's decision to move Riccardo Adami out of the race engineer role matters so much. In 2026, race engineers aren't just managing lap time. They're managing energy deployment, battery temperatures,
regeneration windows, and survival strategies. One wrong call, and a driver becomes powerless on the straights. Ferrari is restructuring Hamilton's environment now to reduce noise and rebuild trust, but that only works if the car itself is stable. If Ferrari spends the Barcelona test stuck in the garage chasing reliability issues while rivals collect data, the damage won't just be technical, it'll be psychological. Because in new regulation eras, momentum hardens fast. History makes this pattern painfully clear. In 2014, Mercedes didn't just start ahead, they locked the field out before rivals understood the problem. In 2022, teams that misread porpoising lost entire development cycles correcting fundamentals. The early winners dictated the technical narrative, the rest reacted. Ferrari knows this better than anyone because they've been on the wrong side of that curve repeatedly. That's why the anxiety around 2026 isn't emotional, it's structural. If Ferrari guesses wrong now, the cost isn't one bad season, it's 2 or 3 years of chasing a concept that never quite works. And by the time regulation stability locks in, the championship may already belong to someone else. By race 6 or 7, concepts lock in, development paths diverge, and teams that start behind rarely recover without regulation intervention. Charles Leclerc knows this, Ferrari knows this, and if you want deeper breakdowns of what these regulation changes really mean, make sure you're subscribed and click the next video on your screen right now.